My name is Damany, and this is how you sell without selling out. Roger's that.
Hi, I'm Rogers Healy, and welcome to Rogers That, a podcast dedicated to selling without selling out. I'm going to read a bio about my pal, one of my best friends, but I'm going to speak from the heart for a second. I consider Damany Daniel to be one of the most interesting people I've ever met, one of the most captivating people I've ever met, one of the most determined and in a really, really loving way, confident people ever. I feel like Damany helps change the lives of people in his wake, where there's this unintentional or maybe intentional encouragement to just be yourself. Damany does it on a 10 with volume, literally and figuratively, where you can't help but want to just be a part of what he's doing. We met probably 15 years ago. We never became really close friends till about 6 years ago, where my first date with my now wife, Damany, just really took care of us and made us feel special. And there's a
made you work for it.
Made me work for it. But we just were we were attached at the soul from that moment. And over the course of time, became best friends. I get to work with his wife. I get to work with him. He does a lot of things. He's a Renaissance man. He's a family man. He's a man of faith. But he is a different type of visionary, which leads me to my bio. Damany is a visionary. I already said that. Leading a team of creative misfits, which we're going to get there, who are constantly searching for ways to create amazing experiences for clients. And these are not clients like you'd think. These are clients like massive universities. These are clients that have overseas headquarters. We're gonna dive into the world of everyone's favorite nerd. With over 30 years of experience in events, technical and production management, and experiential planning and strategy, Damany has a passion for finding innovative solutions and lives his mission of connecting people with moments that actually matter. And he likes to change the world using technology and storytelling, which again, just put on your seatbelt. And if you have not had caffeine today or done your cold plunge, that's okay. Because by the time this episode finishes, we're all going to just collapse. So all that to be said, Damany, welcome. This has taken 2 years to get this man in the room with me. Welcome. Who is Damany? Actually, let's start like your name. What a cool name. That it's a one of one name like you. Where does Damany come from?
Yeah, people tell me that. Oh, I like your name, and I'm always like, thank you. I had nothing to do with it, but I take credit. It's my father. So my full name, my first name is James. My father's first name is James. My grandfather's first name is James. And my mother and father kind of had an arrangement, which was, she birthed the children and he would name them. And she said to him, I don't want a third, because my father was junior. My grandfather was senior. And she's like, I don't want a third. So I don't want a Trey or figure it out.
Triple.
Yeah, I don't want a trip. So she was like, figure it out. And so Damany, and so my father was really into understanding, my father really believed in the power of words and the power of meaning and the power of meaning in names. And so he was also doing a lot of research on names from a variety of African dialects. And so he intended to make sure that all of me and my siblings' names had some significance. And so my name Damany means thoughtful king or wise one. I've got a sister, Imani, whose name means faith, and another sister, Sais, whose name means desert garden. So every name, and if you get to know us, you see that, right? My sister, Sais, is one of the roughest, sweetest people you'll ever meet, right? She's standoffish until she gets to know you, and then she will go 10 toes down for whatever you need. My sister, Imani, if she decides that a thing that she believes in is going to happen, the thing is going to happen. And so it's really impactful to think that my father, who's now passed, 40 some odd years ago, intentioned the life for his kids way off into the future.
There's a Blake Shelton song, which I know you're a huge Blake Shelton fan.
I am. I love that one.
That one?
That
one.
Yeah.
He remixed it. There's one, he has a song called I'll Name the Dogs. And the whole thing is the woman names the babies and then he gets to name the dogs. But your dad remixed it before it was even a song.
He did.
So that's awesome. So other than the origin of your name, like, again, you're so eclectic and you're just so unapologetically you. And I know there's a story there and there's a journey, but maybe get us inside, who actually you are and how you got to the point where you're, you love the word nerd. I love the word kid. right? And I like to live my life every day like I can feel like a kid, not a child, but you're a nerd,
Yeah,
and you've embraced it, and you
am.
want to extract that. We're talking about, he has his own podcast, 52 episodes with his twin brother, Byron, where he just obsesses, whether it's someone in NASA or someone in education or someone in real estate, like he wants to pull that inner nerd out of you every single day.
Yeah.
But you had to get there. So what was the story where you learned how to make that happen?
Yeah. So it's a great question. I attribute a lot of it to my parents, and specifically to them giving me access to things that I should not, quote unquote, have had access to. So growing up in the late 80s and early 90s, obviously there's no internet, right? And so my mother is an elementary school teacher, and prior to that, she worked at a bank. She and my father met when she was working at a bank. She was a vice president, and he came looking for money for an initiative of his. She said no. But he said, "Can I take you to coffee?" She said yes, and the rest is history. And from that point on, their interests were always so diverse, right? My grandparents' interests were so diverse. My grandparents on my mom's side were some of the first Black art collectors in New York. There's a New York Times article that features the two of them talking about their Black art collection.
Your dad's parents?
My mom's parents.
Wow.
And so I was raised in this environment where I was surrounded by really cool, really unique, really eclectic people. Because my mother grew up collecting art with her parents, my father also became, during the time that he was alive, he was a jazz DJ on a radio station. He was a pastor. He was a nonprofit leader. He was a fundraiser. And there are pictures of me doing everything from helping my father with audio at an event, to helping my mother in the classroom, to giving an opening intro for David Dinkins, who would go on to become the first Black mayor of the city of New York. And there's a picture of me as a 10-year-old, like giving a speech before he walks up. And so I was just always surrounded by these really interesting people. My parents, once they got married, had an organization called With These Hands, which sounds like it would be boxing, but it's not. It's actually an organization that was about celebrating and supporting African-American artists, specifically at the time in New York City. And so they would do what we now call pop-up galleries. That terminology didn't exist. But I grew up going to these pop-up galleries in libraries and in the Brooklyn Museum, where my mother and father would bring in these artists who would go on to be world-renowned, who were just their friends.
How old were you?
Under, like 10 and under. 12 and under.
So you got used to that circle pretty quickly, which means it never intimidates you or overwhelms you, and that's just kind of what you're used to.
Well, and it takes it a step further. I absolutely don't get intimidated by any of the spectrum, not either end, but any of the spectrum, because I also knew that we grew up in Brooklyn. And while we were surrounded by these, fancy people, my sister's godfather was the late Clark Terry, amazing jazz trumpeter.
You went with trumpetist, and I accept trumpetist.
You said trumpetist?
Trumpetist?
Trumpetist? Yeah, trumpetist.
Is that also someone that votes for?
No.
Okay, man. Are you a trumpetist? Yeah.
But while we grew up around them, there's this story that's true that,
and that's 30 minutes, folks. Thanks for this.
You asked the question who I am.
We're just at age 10. We have 33 years to go.
We have 32.
32
okay?
years.
Calm down.
Sorry.
Calm down. It's fine. But no, but then
technically
also
33, because when you're born, you're 0.
Fine.
Okay, hold on. Keep us going.
Yes.
It's November 1st, 1989. And
well, but what was also interesting, while I was surrounded by these folks, we lived in Brooklyn during a time when Brooklyn was not great. And so the crackheads and the drug dealers knew us as well, right? Because they knew my father, because they knew him as Rev. And so he was respected in the community. And so I remember one time we were walking through and some crackhead walked up and was trying to mess with us. And one of the dealers from the park said, "What are you doing, man? Don't you know who that is? Them's Rev's kids." And this crackhead goes, "I'm so sorry, miss. I didn't mean any disrespect." And so we lived in these two spectrums, right? Where my father was, and my mother were as gracious to the people on the corner and earned their respect in the same way that they earned the respect of business leaders. And so the reason that I feel like I'm so
remember this as a 10-year-old?
Yeah.
And that was just normal for you, where it gives you a sense of not invincibility, but just it's a confidence that most people never experience. You felt safe.
Yes. And there's never a room that I feel like now that I can't walk into. That is something that has happened over time, because for the longest time I felt, and still we all do, would feel the imposter syndrome, right? Especially thinking about where I came from, the experience that I had or didn't have. But all of it, as I look back on it now, was my mom and my dad getting us access to things that we shouldn't have access to. Before I was in high school, before I graduated from high school, I had been to Zimbabwe, South Africa, and Spain for free. That my mom found through some, I don't know, like a thing on a board, and said, let me call this phone number. And we got to go to these educational trips. So the world
you
was
sold that board pretty hard.
I did.
Yeah,
like it's sitting
there's
over
no
there.
board over here, but
there could be. They don't know.
Go find your board.
Go find
that is your.
all right, we're done here.
Yeah, thanks for coming. So you had all these experience again, like it's just in volume, and it's not like you were spoiled because it was with the vehicles were genuine, and was that something that was hard to get used to at such a young age? Like a word I keep access. Yeah, you have access unlike anybody I've ever met, and you learned that at a young age. Was that something that just became a normal thing?
I think yes, and I don't know that I'd ever thought about it becoming a normal thing, but it was. I mean, I think if I think through the rest of my career, my life. That was my elementary school. Middle school, I was the kid who got connected with all the teachers and professors. When I got to high school, I was on the superintendent's council for bloogity bloop, schmoggity boop. By the time I graduated from college, they had given me a master key to the university as a senior in college because I was working in places that they got tired of having to send security to open up the doors for. So they just said, here's a master key, Damany. And that was me as a, 20-year-old in college, walking around a internationally recognized university with a key that most adults don't have. So for me,
was it literally a key?
Yeah, I mean, it was 97. Yeah, it was a key.
Wow.
Yeah, physical key. I used to have a ring, and then I convinced my boss to there's got to be a master key, right?
Did you ever take advantage of the key?
No. I mean, I would go into the campus. I would go in late. But I was super square in college. I also went to a super square college. So there wasn't a lot to get into.
Do you still have the key?
No, I had to turn that in when I resigned.
Did you make a copy of the key?
I thought about it, but it actually had a big fat do not duplicate on the top of it.
Okay, so we got through the first half of your life.
I took you all the way to college.
No, but well, it's the first half.
Yeah, it's true.
Literally, how depressing is that?
I know. I've been out of college for...
You've been out of college longer than you were alive when you graduated college.
Wow, that's rude, but also accurate.
Yeah, it sucks. Man, okay, back to the good news. So all this stuff, and I'm going to ask you a question on the fly, but as you started to develop this, did you realize what your superpower was?
No.
If you look back, what was it?
I think
which you still have. I mean,
I think it's connection.
And
connecting. I like people. I do. 85% of the time. Right. And I like seeing people get connected to each other. And I realized looking back, that's the thing that I'm really passionate about. I was talking to a group of young leaders yesterday, and that's the thing that I said is I really love connecting people to each other by the thousands, but by the ones or the twos in the midst of those thousands as well.
So how did you learn that at a young age to leverage that into a career, a profession?
I didn't. I have this thing that I like to call skill adjacencies. And it's this idea that the things that I'm good at now, I should not be good at. And I wasn't good at when I started, quote unquote, whatever started.
100%. Dude, it's so we've never had this conversation. And you take such a positive approach to it where kind of part of my shtick is that everything I tried, I sucked at, but it's because I quit. Right. But I think that the more genuine answer is that it didn't feel natural.
Yes.
Right. And I feel like, and again, this is why we hit it off so quickly, is that there's a word, like the word volume comes to mind, where you and we have a lot of relationships, a lot of friends. We've tried a lot of things, but you've trusted your guts, which is why you meet Heather, it's like game over. I meet Abby, it's game over. Yeah. But we had experiences before there to lead us there. So along the way, you probably had a more positive approach than I did.
I eventually had a more positive approach.
Well, but even with the venture stuff, like you're saying, I can't ever get resentful for real estate or for working at Blockbuster Video or working in all these different things that I tried in my mind long enough. It might have been a day, it might have been a year, it might have been 6 months. But as you started to do this, you said, what is it?
Skill adjacencies.
Okay, so dive deeper in that because I feel like that's really crucial for both of our stories, but people that are paying attention today. So Explain that. Like as you're going through the journey, how do you extract that? Like I didn't just waste a year of my life.
It's a great question. There was no trajectory for me during the time that I've been alive. I have worked on the foreign exchange trading floor for Chase Manhattan Bank. I have worked in a legal office. I have worked for the Brooklyn DA. I have worked for Paul Tudor Jones, who is one of the 40 richest men in the world. I have also been a wedding DJ and a wedding planner, and I have been a salesperson. I tried to do car sales, it didn't work out. And so,
what kind of cars?
I don't even remember. I like went for the first day, and I was like, nah. It's like when you called me and said you should be a realtor, and I was like, no, I shouldn't. No, I should not. I'm not going to follow up with people.
It's because you know yourself.
But it's because I've learned the things that do and don't work, and so the skill adjacencies thing is. There's a thing that I started out as. I thought once I finally figured out what I wanted to do, that I was going to be an audio engineer. I wanted to travel around the world, working with bands, doing audio. That's what I knew. Then I did it for a little bit and I hated it. Also, I wasn't good at it. That helped. And then I was like, maybe I'll be a lighting guy. Maybe I'll be a video person. But I wasn't actually good at any of those things. But every step along the way, I picked up something new. And so I look at a skill adjacency as you are good at real estate. You've kind of proven that, right? Along the way, there was something that came up that you were like, oh, I can sell you this house, but I can also help you move across the country. Relocation is built. Oh, you need help with, we now have this capital. We can invest in these businesses and these brands that mean something to us. Morrison Seeger is born. Morrison Seeger didn't make sense 15 years ago for you.
So we never had this conversation, and you take such a positive approach to it, where kind of part of my shtick is that like everything I tried, I sucked at. But it's because I quit, right? But I think that the more genuine answer is that it didn't feel natural.
Yes.
Right. And I feel like, and again, this is why we hit it off so quickly, is that there's a word, like the word volume comes to mind, where you and I have a lot of relationships, a lot of friends, we've tried a lot of things, but you've trusted your guts, which is why Heather you meet Heather, it's a game over. I meet Abby, it's game over. Yeah. But we had experiences before there to lead us there. So along the way, you probably had a more positive approach than I did.
I eventually had a more positive approach.
Okay. Well, but even with like the venture stuff, like you were saying, like I can't ever get resentful for real estate or for working at Blockbuster Video or working in like all these different things that I tried in my mind long enough. It might have been a day, might have been a year, might have been 6 months. But as you started to do this, you said, what is it?
Skill adjacencies.
Okay. So dive deeper in that, because I feel like that's really crucial for both of our stories, but people that are, paying attention today. So explain that, like as you're going through the journey, how do you extract that? Like I didn't just waste a year of my life.
It's a great question. So I look at it like this: you start. There's a woman on my team who is a graphic designer. She's an artist by trade and a graphic designer. And COVID started, or the panini, as I like to call it.
The what?
The panini.
The panini?
Yeah, because I don't want to give the pandemic word any more power. But it started, and
panini.
It's Heather's word. I have to give credit. It's my wife's word, and she did start using it. And I was like, I'm gonna use that. Let's go.
My mom went to my parents' house last night, and my parents drink wine, and my little niece was there, and she goes, "Granny, are you gonna have your night coffee?" I was like, well, I went to GoDaddy. I was like, that's freaking.
Did you buy it?
It was $4,400. I didn't.
You did not.
And then I went to Instagram. I was like, it's got 50,000. I was like, night coffee. There's something there, right? Tea time. Anyway, sorry. So panini. I'll have my night coffee with my panini.
With your panini.
Yeah.
And then I just lost my train of thought. Choo choo. You're gonna have to edit this part because I just lost where I was.
No. You're talking about during COVID.
Yes. So she's a.
Did you say choo choo?
Choo choo. I lost my train of thought.
Oh my god!
But it kind of brought it back. So all of a sudden, overnight, we produce events for a living. Our job was to get thousands of people in a room together. You're not doing that anymore. And so we were put in this position where people started asking us, "You do virtual events, right?" Yeah, 100% do virtual events. And I remember going to one of my team and saying, "Have you ever done this particular type of graphics?" And she was like, "No." I said, "But you've done this type of graphic, right?" She was like, "Yeah." I said, "Based on what I've seen online, I can't do it, but it seems like it's most of what you've done. And if you take this course that I'll pay for, then you will learn how to do this other side of graphics that I need. Are you open to it?" "Sure." And she did. And then she became the kind of designer that I needed for the broadcast stuff that I was doing.
Which maybe your superpower 2.0 is what? You like connecting, but what are you able to do with
encourage?
People? Yeah.
I mean, I want people to see the things that's possible. And so we look back now, and the same thing with artists. There were some artists that I came to and said, have you ever painted in 3D, in virtual reality? He was like, no. Does that exist? I was like, I mean, not really, but sort of. And I said, if I bought you the software and let you play around with it for a month, could you do it? Because I already sold it to a client. And he was like, yeah. And now, 8 years later, what's funny is 8 years later, I saw an Instagram reel that went viral from a woman who was painting in virtual reality that we did 8 years ago. Right? And so for me, I look at those situations, and now these artists, these people are creating these things that I'm not going to take credit for, but I know that a part of the journey was them deciding to take this skill that wasn't exactly their skill. So you take this skill, this is what you're good at, and then this is 85% of what you're good at with 15% of learning, and then you get good at that. And then this is 85% of this with 15%, and you get good at that, and then it just keeps going. And so you get down the road 42 years later, and you look back and you're like, oh, that's why I worked at the legal office. That's why I worked on the foreign exchange trading floor. That's why I worked with Paul Tudor Jones, so that I could understand what it meant to walk into those rooms. I don't feel intimidated walking into a room with a billionaire because a billionaire sat in my classroom every week. And I also don't feel intimidated by talking to somebody who may have a less desirable circumstance that they're trying to come up from, because I've also been there. I grew up in a house with no ceiling and unfinished floors, that when my father passed away, we discovered that kind of things weren't as good as we thought they were. So I have lived in a place where we lost everything. So I can talk to someone who has lost everything, but I've also been in the room with billionaires and kings and heads of state. And so I can have the conversation there as well.
Which means maybe your third gift is maybe you're a very approachable, you're an every guy, right? I mean, you're not, but you have the gift of just making people feel, you're disarming.
I'll talk to anybody.
Yeah, and we know that, and we've learned that. And I think that's part of your blessing. So I'm going to jump out of order. You just shared some really valuable stuff. And so let's talk about maybe your younger self or someone that's maybe in an inflection point in their life. Best advice you could give them right now would be what?
Do the thing. I was talking to someone literally yesterday. I talked to some young leaders yesterday, and I was talking to a woman. I was part of a leadership program about 11 years ago. Trey Ball started it. You know Trey.
He works literally, right? And he works 2 doors down.
All right, well, I'll go yell at him.
Yeah, he's in Italy. So you can just talk at this volume. They'll hear you. Trey came and asked me to be a part of this leadership program, to start this leadership program with him. And I felt like a complete fraud every time I walked into the room. I didn't know why I was in that room. I didn't know why I was there. And I was talking to this woman yesterday who was in a similar situation where she was like, these people are working nonprofit. I work for a for-profit entity in the marketing department or something like that. I don't feel like I have as much to offer as this nonprofit leader. I said, I was a wedding DJ who was sitting in the room with the CFO of the Texas Rangers. How do you think it felt? But I said, the thing that I can tell you is do the thing. What is the thing? I don't know. Go to the thing, do the thing. Try it. You think that you're interested in event planning? Okay, try it out. You think that you're interested in coffee roasting? Try it out. You think that you're interested in podcasting? Try it out. Because you don't know along the way what the things are that you're going to discover about yourself. You don't know yet the way that creativity is going to show up for you. Because that's the thing is, everyone's creative. And if we can figure out the ways that we're creative by trying out and showing up to the things, I think it makes a bigger impact. Because there is no world in which you know what you want to do. I don't know what I want to do tomorrow. I know what I have to do tomorrow. I don't always know what I want to do tomorrow or the day after or a week from now or a month from now, because so much of what I want to do tomorrow could be shaped by the thing that happens today, right? Like I may want to sit by a pool tomorrow with this cup, right? Just sipping. Water.
Or not water, from your face.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have known that if I had not come here today.
Man, that's wisdom.
By sipping from your face?
No, but I'm serious. You have such a poignant way of taking. I usually get angry when I talk about, what some would consider a waste of time, but it was God preparing you to do what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
But I feel like part of the way that we're wired, which is it's dangerous, is that there's no end goal, right? And I think that's why, you have a wife and you have children, is it keeps you grounded, even though you're already working on, tomorrow. But that's a tough space for me, right? Is it like I don't ever want to perfect anything, right? I don't ever want everything to be running smoothly, where I think another one of your superpowers is like fixing things, right? Or like someone told me a long time ago, and I'm sure I've told you this, is if someone handed me plans of a house or a blank page, a blank piece of paper and said, draw your dream house, I would poop my pants. But if they said, here are plans and I can make it my own, that's where my brain works. And I feel like you and I maybe are similar in that.
I'm a blank sheet of paper guy, though.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like, I talk about the difference between my wife and I as far as how we express our creativity. I'm a blank sheet of paper creative, right? Heather is a catalog creative. And I don't mean, not everyone is catalog creative. What I mean by that, similar to you give me plans and I'm like, okay, here's how we're going to do it. Here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to, whereas me, I love a blank sheet of paper. I love to ask what if. I don't often ask how. I'll ask what if and why a lot. I don't often ask how. I let the how be done by other people. Huh. My wife is one who likes to figure out the how of the thing. I've got members of my team who like to figure out the how of the thing. I'm like, what if we, and couldn't we, shouldn't we? Let me know. Research it and get back to me.
Wow, so that's a good lead in. I want to make sure we edify your business too, right? Again, you know yourself so well, which means maybe talk about Event Nerd and talk about how you've structured, you leverage technology with experience, with creative, with 3D painting and all these crazy things that again, people probably think you're insane and then you deliver, right? So how do you go and find a way to be an entrepreneur, a business owner, a husband, a father, a Christian, all these crazy, awesome things, not crazy, all these awesome things, and then leverage that into a very successful business? Heavy question, sorry.
No.
How do you find a way to be yourself for a living for profit?
Yeah, it's a good question. And it's a question that I have struggled most of my life with. Because for the vast majority of my life, and still occasionally, I did not feel like the convergence of the things that I was made sense in most rooms that I was going into. Because I wasn't just one thing, right? I wasn't just a singular type of person or a monolith of an idea. And so it for me, I always felt weird because which version of me needed to show up? And I would argue within the past 5 years, honestly, I've come to a place where I'm like, the version of me that shows up is the version of me that shows up because all of this is me. All of the fanciness, but also being able to throw down. All of the love of musicals and also the love of movies. Like all of this is who I am. And so for me, I think it's just realizing that who you are matters when you show up somewhere. I had a friend of mine, my friend Sasha Sousa. She's a luxury and celebrity wedding planner in Napa Valley. And I used to travel and speak at conferences, and I used to do it for free. And I'll never forget one time, she pulled me aside and she said, "You're going to speak at this conference?" I was like, "Yeah." And she gets paid to go speak. And she's like, "How much you charge?" "Oh, well, they're going to cover my travel." And she was like, "How much are they paying you?" I said, "They'll cover my travel." I'm thinking I'm new in the career, it's the exposure thing. And she said, "Damany, someone in that room is going to make money off of something that you say. Why shouldn't you?" And that was one of the first times that I was like, oh, yeah.
Are you going to Venmo request me for the podcast?
I mean, I might.
Yeah. What is your Venmo for everyone that learned? Yeah. No, it's fine. But again, that's the innocence of you, right? And I think that's a weird inflection point for founders is that you have to find a way to monetize what you're doing as long as it's genuine.
Yes. Well, and the thing I think now especially, there are fewer and fewer people who just want to do a thing, right? You are a real estate guy who's not a real estate guy because you're interested in all these things. And so I think this idea of like Intarsha being this mosaic of things, this Intarsha mentality where you can be all of these things that you want to be and show up in all of these environments as that. You can show up as Roger Seeley from Morrison Seeger in the same room as you show up as Roger Seeley, the real estate mogul. You can show up as Roger Seeley, the media personality, in the same room as you show up as Roger Seeley, the dad. You can show up as Roger Seeley, the dad, in the same room that you show up as Roger Seeley, the boss, because all of that is who you are in this moment.
So you talk about being a dad, right? And about how you have you're colorful. You have a bold personality. How do you take that home with you and lead your children? How do you go and, again, and we're not there yet because we have a 2-year-old and a 4-month-old, but, they're not going to be just like me. They're not going to be just like Abby. And so how do you take all the stuff that lives in the outer space of your mind and lead your children?
Yeah. Recently, I've gotten better at it.
Have you ever been asked this question?
Probably not like that.
Okay, good. I want to hit you with one that you haven't been asked with.
Recently, I've gotten better at it. I think a lot of it has come because I've started to understand myself more, right? Therapy for myself helps. Reading for myself helps. So I can understand me. So that when I see Ezekiel or Isaac respond to a situation in a certain way, I can do my best, not always successful, to not respond out of my issues, not be triggered. You know, people. How do you get triggered by a 5-year-old? Well, you don't have a 5-year-old, right? How do you get angry because of something that an 11-year-old says to you when they're only 11? That's because you don't have an 11-year-old. And so understanding me so that I don't respond in a way that is not healthy for us, I think is one of the big things. And then also letting them experience. My father, my mom let me experience. I gotta let the boys experience. Mm. We gotta let them try things and fail at things and be really bad at things and be angry and not manage their feelings well so that we can learn how to teach them to manage their feelings well. We have to be able to do that. And they gotta be able to There's an edit point for you.
Ezekiel, Isaac, don't listen to that. Yeah, but that's the part too, is like, you're a professional fixer. Right? And so how do you leave that outside the doors of your home and watch your kids make mistakes and not sit there and shake it out of them?
I don't always. Let's be very clear. I don't always. And I would argue that I don't often, especially because I want you to be right. But I want you to be okay. I want it to be right. I heard, I was listening to this podcast by this woman, Dr. Becky. And she's a child psychologist. And she said she was watching her daughter. She's got 2 kids, I believe. One kid is really good at swimming. One kid is not. And she's like, and the other kid that's not is not. And so she has her daughter or son, I don't remember what she was, in the water with the swim coach trying to teach them to swim. And she said, and I realized, I know that the reason that I want them to learn to swim is because when they are 25 or 18 or 16 and they are in the ocean, if they are swimming like that, they will die. I know that. But I can't stand on the sidelines of the pool and say, swim better. Why don't you understand how to swim? Do you not know that if you don't swim better when you're 18, nobody will respect you and you will die in the ocean? That sounds ridiculous. But that's what we do to our kids. When they misbehave, when they talk back, when they act out, discipline is necessary. But if I'm standing on the sidelines of the pool, yelling at them for the skills that they don't have because they need them when they're 25, which they do, as opposed to saying, jumping in the water or saying to the coach, hey coach, they really need help with their backstroke. Can you help them out? So that when they're 18, they can compete. So that when they're 25, they can be in the Olympics. So that when they are 17, they can just hang out with their friends in the ocean and not worry about whether or not they're going to drown. All too often, we see what our kids should be, and we know that you didn't live the life that you always should have lived as the man that you are now. And I didn't live the life that I should have as the man that I am now. And I want to help my kids avoid that. And so I want to yell at them from the sidelines to keep them, to control them. But if they were swimming and I yelled at them in the pool, would they ever get in the water again? No. And the ocean would be something they would never even approach. Because every time they got close to the water, all they would remember is how I yelled at them and told them they weren't good enough in that moment. So I look at the same thing. I am trying to look at the same thing. When the boys don't show up the way that they should, I tell them, I'm going to ignore you when you're not being who you are. I'm not going to engage with you when you're not being who you are. I will engage with you when you're being who you are. And who you are is loving and kind and beautiful and godly and amazing. So when that person shows up, we can talk. Until then, we're not going to talk.
Unless there's someone in the ocean.
Unless there's someone in the ocean.
You're there.
Then I'll be there.
Man, such passion. We have to talk about your work. So talk to us about these events that you curate and these experiences that you bring all over the world, big and small, whatever definition that is. But just talk to us about some of these things that you put together.
Yeah, I like creating moments. Like I say, I like to create moments that matter and events with swagger. And so everything that we do things with
Panini.
We do only corporate events. Choo-choo. We do only corporate events. I'm very happy for you when you get married and you have your bar and bat mitzvahs and your sweet 16s and all those beautiful family social gatherings, and I don't care about them at all. I like corporate events because you have a little more control over the story that you can tell. But when I do a corporate event, when we do a corporate event, it's not going to be like every corporate event. We're going to put a story to it. We're going to bring in local music. We're going to bring in local art. We're going to make it an experience because we want people to walk away from it having been connected. It really frustrates me that in the world that we're in, when we walk around, we see art, we hear music, we are surrounded by culture. And then we walk into the doors of our offices and into our business meetings and into our conferences, and we're in business mode. But then we walk out the doors, we walk back out into the world of beauty and art and culture, and we look for the best cocktail and the best tacos and the best coffee. Why shouldn't those two worlds exist in the same place? So every event that we get to do, whether it's Questlove's Hip Hop Brunch for Capital One, or Nas with the Dallas Symphony Orchestra, or corporate events for software companies here and abroad, it's always, how can we bring the outside in? That's through things like plans, but it's also through things like programming. It's making sure that the music is on point. There's a DJ on the stage, that there are live bands, that there are great food options that don't taste like you got out of a chafing dish, even if you did.
Chafing dish?
That's the thing that you put the thing in.
Make it chafe?
No, it's.
True.
I mean, you might. If you wore it, it's a med pan. It might make you chafe.
So again, the superpower of storytelling, experiences, etc. Anybody watching this, listening to it anywhere in the world that is a corporate that has a corporate budget, how do they find you? How do they enlist your services?
TheEventNerd.com. People told me that they can't understand the Event Nerd.
THA?
THE.
Oh, okay.
I said V once and someone was like, how do you spell that? They put THEE like I was talking in Old English. It was confusing.
Oh.
Yeah, I know.
Bridgerton.
Yeah, Bridgerton.
The worst show of all time.
I've never watched one episode.
I unfortunately have.
Yeah.
But I digress. Emily in Paris also just as annoying.
No,
but
never watched. I've been in the room while there have been episodes on, but I've never sat down and watched one.
Wow. There's a lot to unpack here, man. There's a lot.
I'll come back.
No. It's just we almost need to do a two-parter, but I want to make sure we don't lose. We got a certain amount of time, but let's fire off some questions. What does a successful brand mean to you?
What does a successful brand mean to me? If people connect with whatever the message or the mission of that brand is, and that can only and there's a connection that if I'm the owner of the brand, can want you to have, and then there's a connection that you will have. There's a brand that I want you to believe that I am. There's a brand that you are. My clients this year started referring to my team as the Nerds, right?
That's strong.
Yeah, I mean, and so they talk to each other like, oh yeah, I'm working with the Nerds right now, and they refer me to other people, oh, the Nerds are so great. I didn't give them that brand. I mean, I did. The name of the company is The Event Nerd. But I never said, oh yeah, refer to us colloquially and collectively as the Nerds. That was something that they did.
Difference between a nerd and a dork.
Nerd and a dork.
I'm a dork.
Yeah. The joke I used to tell people is you can either be a nerd or work for one. Nerds, I think, are people that are passionate about things, whatever they're passionate about. Whether it is real estate or finance. The thing that if I ask you, tell me about blah, 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 that you like get a slight smile, sit back and like, okay, that's what you're a nerd about. A dork, a dork is someone who is occasionally aware of their aloofness and may or may not use it to their advantage. I think you are very aware of your aloofness, and you definitely use it to your advantage.
See, I've always thought that nerds were dorks that didn't know they were dorks.
No, I think nerds are dorks that excelled and evolved.
Well, I've always, maybe I'm a nerd.
Rogers, you're absolutely a nerd.
I thought I was a dork. I've always.
Hold on.
Don't give me is this time? Did the captain invite me to the cockpit and I get my wings?
Yeah, you did.
Really?
Here you go.
I'm going to cut myself. You, really?
Yes.
Man, it only took 6 years. Oh, it's a magnet. I can't.
No, it's not a magnet.
It's not a magnet.
It's a pen.
Yeah, we'll do this after.
Yeah, I see blood.
Yeah, I have very sensitive nipples, and I'll find a way to pierce them. Okay, another heavy question. Legacy, right? You look back and you think about all these from a worldly perspective. We know how great of a husband and a father and a family man and a believer you are, but you talk about legacy, and again, there's no end goal, that's That's stressful.
It is.
What's the legacy when you look back?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's like it is weird and stressful because I don't know when I will have arrived at what the event nerd is, right? Or what I am and who I am. There are many more things that I want to do, right? I want to open up a music venue. I want to open up a dining complex. I want to help Rogers fix his microphone. I want to do
coffee kicked in. Sorry. I'm sorry.
And so I also want to be an art collector and see Dallas made better and have more access to art for more people. So there are all these things. Yeah, nerd. There are all these things that I want to do, and I don't know what legacy means. And what I say by that, what I mean by that is legacy for so long, for so many people, has meant what is the thing that I'm leaving behind. Depends on what side of the Mason-Dixon line you're from.
But then again, do the thing, right? Yeah. That was your advice. So that's the advice you would give somebody. What's the best advice you've ever received?
Would probably be some version of show up, right? Some version of try the thing. And I don't know that it was a verbalized advice. Like, I don't know that someone said to me, try things. But when I was constantly confronted...
What side of the Mason-Dixon line was that just on?
It was the east side. Try things. But when people would put stuff in front of me as an opportunity, but then not let me not take advantage of that opportunity, like, oh no, you're going to Spain. You're going to write this essay, and you're going to Spain. You're going to Zimbabwe. You're going to write this essay and keep your grades up because I don't know when you are going to get this opportunity again. So some version of try things.
Is there such thing as balance?
Yes, but what it looks like changes arguably every day. I heard a woman say, I believe she was a leader at one of the software companies, and I'm so sorry. In the show notes, I'll find out who she is so you can list her in the show notes.
Pop-up video.
Yeah, pop-up video.
Microsoft.
But I think she was the head of Pepsi. But what she said was, you never show up as your perfect self, ever. There were some days where you were going to be a great parent and a really bad boss. There were some days when you're going to be a really great boss and a really bad husband. There were some days where you're going to be an amazing husband and it's going to come at the expense of your time or potentially your relationship with your child or your children. And then there are some days when it all hits. But on the days when you are better at one thing than the other, it doesn't mean you're bad at the other thing. It just means that for this day, for this moment, this is what balance looks like. And every now and then, balance happens. But I think that what balance means is different from day to day. I don't know how to do downtime, and I'm working on it. Since I got married, I've wanted to be a video gamer. And it seems like a thing that I would want to do. I'm a nerd. I want to play video games. I can't. What are we doing? It's been 15 minutes. Why are we're still doing this? So balance, I think, changes. And balance for me as a parent is very different from balance now. As a parent of an 11-year-old is very different from me from balance as a parent of a 5-year-old.
I think I have a question you've never been asked.
Okay.
If you were an event, what would it be?
I can tell you.
Damn it.
Because my wife threw it for me. So for my 40th birthday, Heather threw me a 40th birthday party. And it was perhaps the perfect event that I've ever been to. There was amazing food, there was a raw bar, and there was like family from all over the country, and there was a DJ, and then she surprised me with a band, and not just a band, she surprised me with a band that was led by Robert Sput Seawright, who is the Grammy Award-winning member of Snarky Puppy and the founder of Kirk Franklin and God's Property. And
GP, are you with me?
Oh yeah, we have the church ain't going nowhere. So this was the guy that showed up on stage and then played show tunes. Like, he is a 7-time Grammy Award-winning drummer, and he built this amazing band. And when he asked Heather, what do you want me to play? She gave him a long list, and it was everything from like Herbie Hancock to Not Throwing Away My Shot, and they played them all. And then and it was just, that was fun because it was vibey, it was chill, but it was also fun. It was the right amount of nerdy. My siblings and I danced in the middle of the dance floor to Newsies as played by the dopest band in the history of bands.
Wow. Christian Bale Newsies?
Christian Bale Newsies.
Yeah. Man.
That's favorite movie of all time.
Newsies?
Yeah.
Really? What's the song, the popular song from it?
You want me to sing it? Which one? I can do them all.
Like, just maybe like 3 words from it.
Open the gates and seize the day. Don't be afraid and don't delay. Then it goes. It's yeah. I can keep going. I know all of them.
I believe it.
Yeah.
What is left for you to do?
Everything.
Man.
I told you. I think there are things that I have not done, and there's no goal. Like there's no end goal. So I know that there are things that I want to do in the next 5 years that are opening up an entertainment concept, right? I know that there are things that I want to do. I want to produce cooler events, and there are things that I want to do. But what's next is everything, because I don't know. There might be something that I learn about tomorrow that I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
Video games. He's got, by the next time we see him, he's going to have his own video game that came out called the Nerds.
The Nerds. I'm trying.
The last question: how do we best support you? I mean, literally, like, give us Instagram and all that.
The Event Nerd. You literally, if you look up the Event Nerd on any of the Instas, Facebooks, I guess technically X, but you know, we're on all of it. TheEventNerd.com is the website. You can email. Link to email is on the website. And I think the best way that you can support is, I really believe that, you know, I'm in Dallas, and I really believe that in a city like Dallas, the people that change things are the people that show up. Dallas is a city where elections are decided by hundreds of people. We're the 4th largest market in the country. And you would probably, I mean, you have more stats on that than I do. We're the 4th largest media market, one of the top 5 markets in the country. And the decisions are decided by hundreds. Mayoral elections go uncontested. And this is not a commentary on our leadership. This is the fact that we are the 4th largest city in America, and the mayoral race went uncontested. So show up. Show up in your communities. Show up whether it's for art. Show up whether it's for politics. Show up whether it's for finance. Show up whether it's for family. Show up whether it's for education. Show up to things. Because if a boy from Brooklyn who had no connections in Dallas can get to this point in Dallas and be sitting on boards, serving in city commissions, leading a business.
Involved.
It's not that hard if you want to.